A little bit, 28, but you're fine. If it's 30 on your clock, it's totally fine.
Oh, okay.
The house cats agree.
Your cat
ready?
wants to be in the scene.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the membership up, just want to come out with a bang. Four-legged ones.
I can
Let's
see that.
Here we got another one coming in. Okay, I'll wait one more minute. Okay. All right. That looks like a good group. Okay.
Yeah, we're a
Leonor,
good group.
Yeah, Glenda, give me just 1 second. I'm going to mute everybody, and then you can unmute yourself. Is that okay? That way it's easier. All right?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. All right. Leonor, would you talk about the Zoom procedures?
Sure, my pleasure. So as usual, everybody is supposed to be muted just so we maintain the background noise to a minimum. Of course, you are able to unmute yourself if you need to ask a question or interject. We do ask you to keep the noise to a minimum, so remind yourself to keep yourself muted. And as we come to questions, we will allow you to unmute and do your questions. And normally, either myself or Glenda will see who has their hand up and we'll ask for your name so you can ask your question. And that's about it. Thank you, Glenda. Back to you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. And Robert Watson, the Canadian, but he knows these, is going to lead us.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Yeehaw!
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any guests today? Does anybody have any guests here today?
I don't see any at the, oh, yes, we do. We have Betty. I don't know if Mac is here. Hi, Betty. Let me see if Mac is here so he can introduce you. He's not here yet.
He may be late, but
you can introduce yourself.
Oh, you all know me. I was Mac's partner in crime, as he always used to say, and I'm happy to be back with you guys listening to such an interesting program. Good to see you all.
Good. Yeah, well, it's good to introduce yourself, Betty, because we have some new members, and so they don't know you. Okay, we have a couple of birthdays this week. Dwayne Newman, he has a 4th of July birthday, if you can imagine. And then Ann Tish's birthday is July the 5th. So happy birthday. Before we get started, I wanted to wish a speedy recovery to Judy Kirksey. She's recovering from some surgery, but she's doing fine. But I think a nice card from some of us would be good. You know, there's nothing like getting a card in the mail. It's a little bit better than, just an email. I think it's special. Anyway. Okay. And then Ann Ward has something that she'd like to mention. Ann?
Yes, good morning, everyone. The Lions Camp golf tournament is coming up on August the 5th. And I am asking for you to please consider becoming a hole sponsor. This is a way for an individual to support the tournament. It's $100 per hole, and you can sponsor as many holes as you would like. There is this form that you fill out, It's available on the Lions Camp website, or if you will send me a message, I'll be glad to send the form to you. We need to get these submitted in the next week or so because we'll be doing the program, and I want to be sure, and the signs, and I want to make sure that everybody gets recognized on the signs. We also have other sponsorships available, and I do want to give a shout out to Bill Martin. He is going to be a gold sponsor for the tournament, so I'm real happy about that. And of course, this is going to benefit the camp and our ongoing camp operations. So thank you, Linda.
Well, thank you. Well, you can put me down for, I'm going to do $100 whole sponsor.
Okay, great.
If you will send me the form, I will send it
I
off.
will.
To you. Okay.
I
thank you.
will.
Okay.
Anybody else, you can put it in the chat or just send me an email.
Okay, before we start our program, I want to give a brief report on the 103rd Lions Virtual Convention. You know, when they told me I was going to be president, I thought, oh, I have to go to all these conventions. How boring. Well, actually, they're not. I went to the Waco convention and I was very impressed with that. And this virtual convention, it was just awesome. They spent a lot of time and a lot of money. The first sessions I went to, talked about various things that clubs are doing. What I was really impressed with was the Leos. And, I had said that I'd like to focus on working with our Leos more. One of the Leos talked about using TikTok and what's the other word? Reels. And I said I'd heard of TikTok, but I hadn't heard of the other one. So maybe we need to explore this a little bit, but maybe somebody more familiar with the
Reels. Reels is the same as TikTok, but it's from Instagram. So it's something that Instagram made so that they can fight TikTok in a way.
See, we have people who know things like that. Well, perhaps that's something we need to talk about at some point. Not today, but at some point. But anyway, so I thought that was interesting. The convention was.
Can I just say something, Linda? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So to surprise you and for you to know, I'm one of the people that is in charge of the Facebook and Instagram accounts. So we do have an Instagram account, and we have made our first reel, which is the introduction of all our officers. So I do think that you guys should check out on Instagram.com, follow our page. It's Austin Founder Lions. I'll put everything on the chat, and go join Instagram, go join our page, follow us, and do your comments. So we're already up and running on the reel part. So you're good.
Lenore, can you spell reels or wheels or whatever it is?
Reels is R-E-E-L-S. It's the same. It's videos, interactive videos from Instagram.
This is like ask and you shall receive. Wonderful. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the Parade of Nations. That was just a magnificent production. Do y'all know that there's over 1.4 million lions in the world? And I think half of them were at the parade, in these parades. They had parades from lions all over the world, Malaysia, India, China, Japan. And what was interesting is they were parading down the street in their gorgeous, gorgeous costumes with their flags waving. And then a lot of them, they would be going past some beautiful architectural site. China would have with the Chinese site, you understand how that goes. But it was just gorgeous, just gorgeous. I watched some of them several times because the costumes were so beautiful. And then we had the Texas delegation, the parade from the Texans. They started out with San Antonio and did other branches. And then they did 2S3. Now, J.P. Kirksey organized a parade for 2S3 for a dreary, wet, cold day a couple of months ago. We met in Round Rock. It was a miserable day, but we had on our Texas outfits, our little vests. We had on our cowboy hats, and we smiled and we waved our hands and we sang "The Eyes of Texas," and and he had some bluebonnets in the background. So JP, thank you for, I don't see JP. But anyway, he did a great job, and we were lucky that we were able to get our, ours in there because there were so many people parading, and we didn't know if we would make it or not, but we did, thanks to JP, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, I think it's time now to have our program. Drew, would you introduce our program and our speaker, please? Is Drew here?
Is Drew is not here yet. Drew Cheverly.
Drew Cheverly, yes, okay.
Glenda, could I add something to what you were saying about the International Convention? I wanted to make 2 comments. Our service, our club was on the service showcase, and there were like, I don't know, 8 hours or so of that stuff, or maybe more than that. There were 8 different groups, and Alan Ford recorded that and submitted that. And I think it's pretty cool that we were recognized. And I thought it was very interesting. I haven't watched all of it, but I thought it was very interesting to see what service activities clubs all over the world are engaged in. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And then the other thing that I did that I'd never done before, I actually listened to the nominating committee meeting, and I also listened to the business meeting, where the candidates spoke, and that was very interesting too. And it just really gives you the perspective of what a global organization LCI is. And I think it's really great. And I want to put in a word that if you haven't been to a Lions USA Canada Forum, I strongly urge you to go. The next one is coming up in September in Des Moines, Iowa. And Patty and I and Glenda are going. And it's the best thing LCI does in terms of education and getting you fired up to want to serve your community.
Well, thank you. Yes, as I said, I had always thought it would be boring, but the ones I've gone to have been really outstanding, and I have enjoyed them a lot. Well, we seem to have a few minutes here before our program. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add or discuss right now? Yes, Tommy. Hi.
Thank you. Is there a committee meeting of the casino this Friday, Patty?
Yes, it's at 4 o'clock at
4 o'clock.
Rudy's.
All right.
At Rudy's Barbecue, not Rudy's house.
Oh, shucks. It's so good over there. Second thing, I would want to make an announcement. Mark your calendars for August the 28th. And that will be a Founder Lions Club picnic day during the day and the evening. And we will go boat riding and swimming and fishing and bungee jumping. And we'll have barbecue free to everybody. Bring kids, dogs, no cats. And there will be a map out. It's a long way away, but just mark your calendar now, August the 28th. And that is a Saturday. Okay?
You bet. Sounds like fun. Yes. Matt.
Well, I was a couple of minutes late to the meeting, so I wanted to introduce somebody. I see that my lovely former partner in architecture and crime, Betty Trent, is attending the meeting, and so just wanted to welcome Betty. Hi, Betty.
And Betty had introduced herself already, Mac, and
Oh, you
Drew
did?
is
Oh,
already
sorry
here.
about that. Well,
That's
we
all
all
right.
know Betty.
Okay.
We all know Betty anyway. And also I can introduce the speaker if Drew doesn't show up. So,
Drew is
Drew.
connected, but I don't think he's hearing us. So maybe you want to go ahead, and Glenda, if you want Mac to introduce the speaker, he can go.
Okay.
oh, well, let's give Drew just a second. It looks like he's working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There we
there's
go.
Drew. There's Drew.
Hey, Drew. Just in time. You're muted.
Hey there.
Hi.
Great. So am I introducing now?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry to be a little slow here. So I'm really pleased to be able to introduce Nikki Graham, one of the true worthiest citizens of Austin. I had the honor to have her as my volunteer chair when I was at the Austin Chamber, and she did fantastic work stewarding the community through her leadership on several really thorny issues, to include in education and enhancing education outputs, modernizing the school finance system, and was truly one of the most substantive and thorough volunteers that I had the opportunity to work with. Her day job, as much as she got to do it for quite a long time, was being the market president for Bank of America. She has recently retired from that position. She is recently running the Lopez Foundation, but she is serving this year, 2021, as the Austin Chamber of Commerce chair, and she's going to share with us the priorities, her priorities for 2021. So thank you, Nikki, for your time, and I'm going to go on mute. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Drew. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you for including me in your meeting today. Much appreciated. I'll talk a little bit about what the Chamber and Opportunity Austin have been involved with over the last year plus. And I just want to also share how much I enjoyed working with Drew at the Chamber. He's truly dedicated to the betterment of our local students and their success in post-secondary, knowing that those are the skill sets that are going to be needed for the jobs that we're bringing to Austin. And he remains truly committed to that purpose. So thank you, Drew, for all your work and continue to work in that space. So as you can imagine, when I took on and accepted the role as chair, it was the end of 2019 in a very different world than what we've experienced over the last 18 or so months. So in order of priorities, our focus has really been on recovering from the pandemic. As you know, businesses, large and small, have been affected in different ways, with many large companies, their employees going to work from home, and a considerable amount of resources moving from office space to at-home work. We're seeing many of those employees return to work, but obviously there's an impact to our downtown business districts, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So really that recovery piece. The second item that continues to remain near and dear to my heart is making sure that we're focused on students in Central Texas and continuing to build the skills that they'll need for our workforce. I'll share more about that and just some of the success that we've had. But we put together a task force focused on talent. There is a war now for talent among many metro and large cities. Austin has no shortage, I would say, of talent, but and folks moving to the region, but it continues to be important for us to focus on that homegrown talent and making sure that they are qualified for local jobs, with an eye, of course, on inclusive talent and ensuring that there's representation in management jobs especially in management and computer and math and those technology industries. So we focused on that. And then, of course, most importantly is to continue that we increase our membership and focus within the chamber. We're dependent on membership, and so making sure that we continue to increase our membership, and then also supporting our business members through our various efforts. So just to kind of kick off, some of you may know that there are two entities really under the auspices of the Austin Chamber. There's Opportunity Austin and the Chamber. And our focus is similar. We're all moving toward the same direction, but Opportunity Austin really came out of the Austin's crisis in 2008 when kind of the tech sector was not having its best moment, and it severely impacted Austin and the economy. So Austin leaders got together and created Opportunity Austin, and many local businesses contribute to support that. And again, it's both large and small entities that support Opportunity Austin, but the focus there was to bring companies to Central Texas and create jobs. And in 2020, despite the pandemic, Opportunity Austin had a record year, both in recruitment of new companies and then also new jobs. So we saw it was #1 in Opportunity Austin's history for combined total jobs announced, and then also #1 in OA's history for recruitment. We brought over 12,000 new jobs to Central Texas with 45 companies moving to the area. We continue to focus on different sectors, bringing those to Central Texas so we're not overly reliant on any one sector. So we're seeing new developments with life sciences, of course, national defense, which Drew can talk about quite a bit. He did so much work on bringing Army Futures Command, which is just a tremendous opportunity for us in Central Texas. Also the auto industry with Tesla's announcement last year. And then we're also on a cusp of what we're calling the fifth sector, which many of you are familiar with fintech. And fintech has evolved to financial industries, insurance, and real estate technology. So there are a number of companies that have moved from other parts of the country to continue to develop that sector here in Austin. We continue to keep our eye on the ball as things change as I mentioned, with the pandemic. But so far, our net job loss in Central Texas has remained minimal compared to other metro areas across the country. With Tesla, that really was a incredible and continues to be an incredible opportunity for us in Central Texas. So on the record, we've got 5,000 new jobs created by Tesla. And of course, you've seen the announcement that they may bump that up to 10,000. And that'll add a significant manufacturing opportunity for us here. We also continue to focus on retention and expansion of existing businesses here in Central Texas. We have our local company, Samsung, that continues to talk about their expansion efforts in Central Texas, and we continue to support them. It was our number 3 year in our history of local expansions. Now, to support all these new jobs and new companies in Central Texas, we continue to remain focused on education and supporting our education infrastructure in Central Texas. There are two programmatic efforts that are in the chamber that align with Opportunity Austin's focus, and that's DTC 70 and DTW 30. And the way that's really broken up is we made a commitment many years ago to a direct to college enrollment of 70%. And then also acknowledging that many Central Texans may go directly to work, bypassing post-secondary. And typically we focused, that was the remaining other beyond the 70, that was the remaining 30%. But what we know is that that focus on 70%, which we haven't quite reached yet, we know that many of our jobs, including up to 80+% of our technology jobs, require some post-secondary certification. And so we have to keep our eye on the ball and making sure that our local students are enrolling direct to college, and the Austin Chamber has continued to support those efforts. We partnered, we have 29 public school districts in Central Texas, and we continue to focus our efforts on them and supporting those. Although I will say that we have a cohort of public school districts that are actively engaged in the chamber, where we meet regularly with their superintendents. They provide us data. We're able to track them on a regular basis, and they've agreed to share their data with us and make it public to our members so that we can maintain and continue that relationship and focus on what they're doing in the challenge that they're having within their districts, and then also their metrics as they pull through and prepare those students for post-secondary. As you can imagine, it's been a tremendous challenge that our local school districts have faced just over the last 18 months, trying to support students remotely with low broadband access. But I think we can honestly say that our superintendents have made heroic efforts to really support students, and are now, as students come back to school in person, will continue to support them, and then have to address some of the gaps in achievement that they may have seen over the last 18 months. We saw a slight dip in our enrollment numbers over the last year. So our post-secondary enrollment numbers, although Central Texas, while we see an enrollment number around 63% or so, it's far greater than the Texas average of about in the low 40%. So Central Texas is doing very well in our enrollment numbers compared to the state, but still not exactly where we want them to be. So even with the onset of new manufacturing jobs and other jobs that articulate that they don't need post-secondary certification and may take high school graduates, I think that it's up to us as a community to ensure that we keep engaged with our local school districts and keep our expectations high for students, because many times, many of these employers require the actual work in manufacturing now is not the manufacturing of old, and the technical skills that are required of students are really at that post-secondary level. We work with organizations like Workforce Solutions, our partners at ACC, and others to keep our commitment on that, those folks who are going directly to work or going to post-secondary and then on to work. Some of the other things that we're focused on are transportation and infrastructure. This year we focused, of course, on the I-35 funding, so that's $7 billion on the redesign of I-35. So this is the first redesign in 50 years, so that's of significant importance to us. We continue to remain focused on Project Connect, and keeping our eye on how the progress of Project Connect and the financing of Project Connect continues to evolve. We're also focused, of course, on the airport. So we had record growth pre-pandemic in our airport. And I think I guess I haven't been to the airport recently, but from what I've heard, it seems to be at record pre-pandemic levels. So lots of activity at our airport. But as many of you know, a few years ago, we announced that with the Chamber's help and influence, British Airways had announced a direct flight from Austin to Heathrow, and we're expecting that to come back in early fall. Also working with Lufthansa and KLM on our Frankfurt and Amsterdam flights. So for the travel that's picking up back to Europe, we hope to see those come back online in the next several months. One of the unintended consequences of our growth, I think we all knew that affordability in housing was a challenge for us, even pre-pandemic and pre-growth, but with the record growth that we're seeing in Austin and the price of housing increasing, we don't have the supply that one would hope that we would have at this point. And of course, prices have increased considerably just over the last 6, 8, 10, 12 months. So the Chamber's continuing to look at affordability and what role we can play in influencing housing affordability in Austin. And then that leads to a couple of other items that aren't traditionally under the auspices of a chamber, but that we've gotten very involved with, especially over the last year, and that's around homelessness. So the chamber kind of put their foot in this water a number of years ago when we had suggested a partnership on very temporary shelters in Austin. This is when the number of homeless that was accounted for was around the 600 to 1,000 on the street. Most recently, we put together a task force of the city, the county, and other business leaders to really look at how we're going to move forward with homelessness with the passage of Prop B. Of course, that work continues to evolve. Many of you have seen the headlines that the city put in $100 million. I think that I haven't seen the latest numbers from the county, but the task force led by Laura Huffman, who is the CEO of the Austin Chamber, is doing a considerable amount of work, bringing all the parties together to work together to move forward on the best solution to address homelessness. Obviously, that affects our businesses, not only in our central business district, which where we have the most tourists and visitors, but it also affects our businesses across the Austin region. And we continue to keep abreast of the issue through our members and their feedback. And I would be absolutely remiss without saying that we spent the first 6 months and latter part of last year focusing on our legislative agenda. That's one of the things that the Austin Chamber does extremely well in advocating for our members up at the legislature. I could say that this year has been probably one of the most challenging years in the area of advocacy and support for our businesses. And we're disappointed at the defeat of Chapter 313, which allowed school districts to attract businesses by giving them tax incentives. Although we didn't use this with great volume, I would say, in Central Texas, when we did use it, we used it very effectively. Bringing large companies with lots of jobs to the area. Some folks at the legislature felt that those businesses would come regardless, but it really will impact our ability to attract new business to the area. So we were disappointed in that, but did focus, I think, as Drew mentioned, Drew, when he was at the chamber, worked very diligently on HB3, which is school financing. We worked to maintain the funding because there was some concern that folks would gut the accomplishments that we achieved in the last session, but that stayed on track, and we were also influential in helping with some new legislation around the tri-agencies. So data sharing agreements between TEA, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and our workforce boards. So that was something that we were focused on, and were able to achieve that passed. And then we also focused on childcare, broadband, and some other supporting legislation that helps our local business. Let's see. That was really, that's what we've been working on. It's certainly been a very interesting year. There's a lot there. There's probably any number of things I've forgotten to share, but those were my initial notes. And I don't know if Drew, you wanted to open it up for questions, or happy to answer those.
So typically Max steps in at this point to make sure I don't screw up the question and answer session. So I am going to defer to Mac or whoever would like to serve in that role. But thank you, Nikki, for your comments.
Well, thanks for the lead in. Actually, I have a question, but I'm going to defer to Leonore to watch the screen and see who's got their hands up or who's asking on the chat. But
I had nobody before you, so go ahead.
Okay, good. I'm glad to go. Nikki, you spoke of recruitment, Opportunity Austin, but in the current frenzy, and believe me, I've been through a lot of frenzies and I like them. I'm an architect and it means we're busy and making money. But is it really necessary to recruit in an environment like this when we've already got Tesla and Oracle and, we're pretty, our cup is pretty full?
Yeah. I think there's different philosophies on that because, there's certainly, the chamber takes a trip every year to another city to learn about their expansion efforts and what they're doing. So this year in October, we'll be traveling to Nashville, which is equally, on the list of competitive cities to attract new business. And so I think that the theory is that if you stop recruiting or lessen those efforts, then you stop that expansion. And I think that even if we're not actively recruiting new companies, they're coming anyway. So I think that what we're suffering from a little bit is perhaps even, and I wasn't here, 20, 25, 30 years ago, but the mantra of if you don't build it, they won't come hasn't worked. So I think right now we're going to have to focus on continuing to build out the infrastructure because the companies are coming.
And if I could have a part two to that. So, and you gave me a good segue on and you mentioned it, the housing issue and affordability and density and what is happening, if anything. It seems like, of course, Code Next got a black eye, but we need a code rewrite, and what's going on with that?
Yeah, I think I would say in almost every conversation I've had, and I wish I could say I were an expert on Code Next and the rewrite and what that entails. I know the current conversation is around a density bonus that's being charged to real estate developers, so that they find confusing. So where they are building density, they're getting charged extra, and meeting those additional cost requirements has become somewhat cumbersome. So I couldn't agree more. I continue to hear the need for continued focus on code rewrites. The chamber has not taken, although we support the need for density, has not taken an active stance, nor have we put together a task force around the rewrite, but we remain involved in the conversation.
Okay, I have Ann Ward next, and then Steve Riley and Gaylord, please.
Hello, Nikki.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation. One of the things that I heard, you keep talking about our community for our businesses and attracting new jobs to our community. And I think that we all want to have a strong economy. But what I'm wondering is, how long is this going to continue? How long is Texas going to be a desirable place if we don't address some of our social and cultural issues? And what I'm thinking of specifically, I mean, I was just shocked when I heard about the shootings on 6th Street recently. I mean, that just, I could not believe that was happening in Austin, Texas. And then, you know, the power grid, we all went through that back in February, and we were like, you know, this is a once in a lifetime thing. This is never gonna, we've got to make sure this never happens again. And now we've got the ERCOT saying, you know, we spent a week trying to conserve energy, and it's not even the hottest part of the summer. And I'm not trying to get this into a political discussion, but some of the policies that we're making are not going to produce the kind of community that people want to live in. And what, if anything, can the business community do to try to keep that from happening?
Well, and I think you bring up an excellent point, and this is a conversation that we have with our members on a daily, weekly, monthly basis within our task force. You know, we do have an infrastructure task force that focuses on things like energy, water, or mobility. And, you know, we continue to have those conversations and apply influence where we can in those areas. Because you didn't mention water, and I think that that's something that we also have to certainly keep our eye on. I think one of the things that you also mentioned was public safety. And that was another topic that, while not anticipated, was certainly first and foremost in our minds last year. And I chaired a task force of chamber members focused on the cuts to the police budget and how those were going to get reinstated. And it was really a diverse group of different sized businesses and different folks that were really paying attention to what was happening in public safety. I think, to your point, you're seeing a lot of politics come out of that. And so I think as community members, it's really important to keep track, to see what's happening, not get too involved in the social media aspects of it, but really get engaged on what's actually being presented and recommended. And the next phase, now that we have our cadet class back in place, so that's been implemented, and there'll be 2 more cadet classes reinstated. And then the next role decision point is, you know, how many police officers, or what the right FTE is for our current police department, as well as choosing the next chief. So I think that these are all issues, certainly, that the chamber is focusing on, and our leadership is engaged on these topics. But couldn't agree with you more, is we have to remain a desirable place for people to live. You know, we hear anecdotally a lot of people are moving away from cities that haven't addressed this well. So it remains up to us to address it early before some of these issues are beyond our control.
Go ahead, Steve.
Great. Thank you very much, Leonor. And Nikki, thank you for a wonderful presentation, really informative. And I think the question I have is when we're bringing in, especially these large, I'm going to call them these large retail names, even though they're not typically retail, but Tesla and some of these others, high profile, as it were. How many jobs that are created when they talk about 5, 10,000, are those, how many of those are native created jobs for here in Texas that weren't in Texas versus ones that migrated from Fremont or migrated from Redmond, Washington, or some other area? And the second part of that is, I think what happens is you get people, I moved here from Los Angeles 13 years ago, but I moved here without a job and then I started my own thing. But how many of this is moving people who are already high earners? They're now taking their large equity that they've cashed in, all of which is great for them and great for all of us, I guess, on a macro level. But they come into the communities now, and you're then left with folks who can sort of ratchet up housing prices, but there's still a group of folks who have been here, who have tried to reskill, who've come through the ranks, so to speak, and put their emotional and family investment in Texas and in Austin, and they're not seeing that opportunity. And I don't mean to be cynical. I'm trying to really get an idea of, have we parsed out those numbers? And can we parse those out? And then I guess a third part to it is, can you incentivize, as we're recruiting, especially from a point of strength, can we incentivize companies who say, look, we're hot to come to Austin? And we say, well, that's great. Y'all are welcome to, but you have to commit to bringing X number of new native jobs to the city, assuming that's all good for everything. Maybe just moving the work is good too. I don't know.
So I love your question. And if you're not a chamber member, I'd love for you to be and get engaged in our conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the conversation that we're having. Because there's any number of entities that say any job's a good job. And if we have in-migration to take those jobs, then that's a good thing. I think some of us remain committed to the fact that I think, several years ago it was brought to our attention that we have one of the highest disparity rates among the wealthy and least wealthy in the country. Austin ranks near the top on that dynamic. So what you talk about, and I keep saying local jobs, I love what you said is native jobs, which is folks who are born, raised, educated in Austin. Are they qualified and getting the jobs that are here? And I think what we're trying to do through this task force that I've put together is that data is not readily available currently through our current data sourcing at the state level. So we're working with the area's largest employers to try to get a data set and a scorecard to track exactly the question that you just asked. Is by bringing in these new employers, are we continuing to add to that income gap or that disparity gap, whether it's rising prices or income levels or opportunity? So we are putting together the data for that, but it's not readily available. So I can't answer your question specifically. What I will say is these, retail names, when they come in, they build incredible partnerships with the local school districts. So in the case of Tesla, they have a relationship with Del Valley School District and are also building relationships with Workforce Solutions, as well as Houston-Tillotson, ACC, to address that worker pipeline. But we want to make sure that those checks and balances are in place at the end to say, how many of you hired that, to your point, are native, are local jobs?
Yeah, and if I can, as a Yankee carpetbagger, but I've been here 13 years, so I can say y'all, and I do own a belt buckle. There's going to be that combination of people who are native born and then people who have been here a while. And I think you still have a cultural collision that's going to happen because you're going to have people coming from other parts of the country. But one way that might ameliorate all of that is if we know data and if we know, hey, look, there's a lot of stuff that these companies have made our collective lives better. So we're all being rewarded for just being in a great city and supporting the inward migration. And people here have been wonderfully supportive in general. But I think, this will almost kind of cover a lot of the other social challenges of disparity of income, disparity of housing, and certainly cultural disconnection is my thought, if we can do it. It's granular data, but we live in a data city. There's got to be a server farm out there who can crunch these numbers for us, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remain committed to finding that source.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your being open to the question and the response too. Sorry to take so long, Lions. So.
No worries.
Thank you. Gaylord, go ahead, and then John after that.
Yes, Nikki, Gaylord Armstrong here, and I join others in thanking you for such a complete report and very informative. And I know the Chamber has been called on for every kind of involvement and work imaginable. I've had the pleasure of being called on by many of your predecessors and CEO predecessors on special projects. Just two quick things. We've kept you a long time, but it's very, very informative and I think really important to our members. Bottom line, key issues, and you know better than anybody how for some elected officials, Austin for decades has been a target, including now, but not so much that in mind as what role was Chamber called on, for example, to try to assist with increasing the amount of vaccinations for COVID-19, and secondly, with the governor and others making such an issue out of immigration, does immigration arise as much of an issue for Austin from the Chamber's perspective?
To the point of vaccination, so the Austin Chamber was engaged to just spread the word to our membership on vaccination sites and availability of companies to partner with vaccination providers or vaccine providers. As you know, we have several large healthcare systems that are members, Chamber members, who have really been leading the effort around vaccinations and expanding those efforts to not only business employees, but then also to just our local Central Texas residents. So I hope that answers that part of the question. I think immigration is, I think that is definitely a topic for all of the Metro 8 chambers across Texas. I wouldn't say that there's any unique role that the Austin Chamber plays in that, but more of a collaboration among all of the chambers in Texas and the focus there. So the chamber has not taken a specific position on immigration.
Well said, and thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate your presentation today. I would make an argument, and I think others would too, that the fact that Austin is enjoying the pinnacle of its economy and a choice destination for business and immigration from all across the United States is not entirely, that has not happened entirely by chance, but rather because of the chamber and local leaders such as Pike Powers and others in the 80s and 90s made a specific effort to change Austin to a knowledge-based economy. And that was a specific program that was supported by the chamber and others in Austin. And we're seeing now the results of that. So the question that comes today is there someone at the chamber now that is looking in the crystal ball and asking the question, what's the future like? If we once in the 90s and the 80s and 90s were looking to become a knowledge-based economy, which we now have, what's the future hold? And I think that it is instructive to me that the Army Futures Command has chosen Austin for its location. And there's a great deal of energy there. The Army is asking itself the question, what's the Army going to be like in the future? So what is the Chamber's answer to the question, what's Austin's future?
Well, I'm glad that you bring up leaders like Pike Powers and others, because you're absolutely right. None of this happens by accident. It takes business leadership, leaders at the Capitol, political leaders that are focused on the betterment of Austin, to focus on what is the Austin of the future. And I think it gets back to, I think it was Ann's question of, how do we ensure that we keep the infrastructure alive and well, so that we continue to build Austin, and the Austin's future is not only, we don't fall prey to some of the issues that many large metro areas have suffered from, and we address those early. But I also would pose that one of the challenges that's placed in front of us now is to create an inclusive economy, and making sure that the Austin of the future includes a diverse workforce, diverse leaders. I think that the leadership of the future is going to look different from the leadership of the past. And what exactly that future looks like, what I can tell you is there's different leaders that are stepping up to lead the future of Austin, and that war on talent and that competition to be the most inclusive city and the most inclusive economy is really what's going to drive success in different metro areas of the future.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for responding all these questions. I don't see any more hands up. I'm going to pass it back to you, Glenda.
Thank you. That was very, very interesting. Obviously, you could tell by the participation that it was of interest to most all of us. And thank you again so much. Before I adjourn, I want to remind you that we have 2 fundraisers coming up. It's already July 1st, which means that September is going to be here in a hurry. So please remember that we need to be looking for sponsors and prizes and things like that for our fundraisers. So if you will keep that in mind, and then the request for the Lions Camp, the golf tournament for the Lions Camp. Is Chuck Maldenbaum still here?
Right here.
Could you tell us a little bit about next week's program?
We all know Dr. Seuss as a writer of children's books, but he had a very serious side before as well. And Greg Phillipson, who was I don't know if he's a professional museum curator, but he has a monstrous collection of information about the Holocaust, about the World Wars, about sports. And he will talk to us about Theater of the Sea, Dr. Seuss, and what he did, including commercially his role in preparing propaganda for the USA, anti-Nazi propaganda, and various other aspects of Dr. Seuss. I think we've seen it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Greg is good at it, and so I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, thank you. That does sound exciting. Does anybody else have anything for the good of Lionism? We'll have a great week, and we'll talk to you.
I got one thing I want to toss in, because we
Okay.
talked about birthdays earlier, and it's time for my annual pitch to recognize the birthday tomorrow of Angelina Eberly, born on July the 2nd of 1798. She's memorialized in bronze at 600 Congress Avenue, firing a cannon, and a combination of Texas folklore and history holds that she had a lot to do with keeping the Capitol located in Austin back in 1842 in what was known as the Archives War, by setting off the alarm in the middle of the night when agents of Sam Houston were trying to spirit away the records to take them to Houston. And my argument is that that had as much to do as anybody, I guess, with keeping Austin weird, because if Austin had not remained the capital, who knows if we would have had the university in the form we have it now, and the legislature certainly has been one of the drivers of weirdness here too. So I'd like to hoist a cold one for Angelina on July the 2nd. It gets lost so close to 4th of July.
Thank you. That's a very good way to close our session. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's great.